Tonight, we are going to slow down together and explore a teaching at the heart of Buddhism, that you are not who you think you are. That beneath the names and the roles and the stories we carry about ourselves, there is something deeper, something that has always been at peace. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. What we will explore tonight comes from the Buddhist and Zen traditions. These are teachings that have helped people find peace for over 2,000 years. Not by giving easy answers, but by helping us see ourselves more clearly. You do not need to know anything about Buddhism to listen. These teachings are for anyone who has ever felt the weight of their own thoughts and wondered if there was a lighter way to carry them. So wherever you are, let yourself settle in. There is nothing to figure out. There is nowhere else to be. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. There is a verse, very old, from the Sufi poet Rumi. In it he asks, "Who are you really, wanderer?" It sounds like a simple question, but when you try to answer it honestly, it gets much harder. Because who you think you are changes depending on the day, the hour, even the room you are standing in. Think about your own life for a moment. Just today, or this past week. How many different versions of yourself have you been? You were a parent, a friend, a worker. You were someone tired, someone busy, someone kind. You were probably a few other people in between. Each of those felt real while it lasted, but none of them stayed. They came and went, one after another, like weather. And if you look back further, over the past year or the past 10 years, it can feel like you have not lived one life, but many. There were whole chapters that feel like they belonged to someone else. A younger version of you who believed different things, wanted different things, worried about completely different problems. Where did that person go? It can sometimes feel like a succession of lives, all lived by the same body. The Buddha spoke about this directly. He said that what we call a self is not one solid thing. It is more like a river. It looks the same from the outside, but the water is always changing. Every moment, a new experience arises. A thought, a feeling, a sensation. It comes together for just an instant, and that instant is all we ever really have. So who are you really? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but right now, in this breath. Let us explore a story about this. There was once a man who lived in a small village at the edge of a wide valley. He was known by many names. To his children, he was their father. To his wife, he was her husband. To the people of the village, he was a carpenter, the one you called when a roof beam cracked or a door would not close properly. He was also a neighbor, a friend, and once a year, when the rains came and the river flooded, he became a kind of leader. He organized the younger men to fill sandbags and redirect the water. In those moments, people looked at him differently. He stood taller. His voice carried more weight. And he believed it. In those moments, he was that person completely. But in the quiet hours of the evening, when the tools were put away and the children were asleep, he sometimes sat on the step outside his door and looked up at the stars. And in those moments, he was none of those things. He was not the carpenter. He was not the father. He was not the leader. He was just a man sitting under the sky, breathing. And he felt, in those moments, more himself than at any other time. One evening, his oldest son, a boy of about 10, came and sat beside him. "What are you doing?" the boy asked. "Nothing," the man said. "Nothing at all?" "Nothing at all." They sat together quietly for a while. Then the boy said, "Who are you when you are doing nothing?" The man looked at his son. He did not have an answer, but something about that question stayed with him for a very long time. He never did find a neat reply, but the question itself had changed something in him. It loosened his grip on all those names and roles, just a little, just enough to let some air in. And that is often how the most important questions work. They do not give you answers. They give you space. They open something up instead of closing it down. This is the kind of question that Buddhist practice invites. Not one to answer quickly, but one to sit with gently. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a teaching that says we are reborn not just from one lifetime to another, but from one moment to the next. The person you were 5 minutes ago is already gone. The person you will be 5 minutes from now has not yet arrived. Each moment is its own small beginning. You can feel this in ordinary life if you pay attention. Think about a time when you were very worried about something, completely caught up in it, and then the phone rang or someone walked into the room, and suddenly the worry vanished. For a moment, you were someone else entirely. The worried person was gone. A new one had taken their place. That shift happened in an instant. And it happens all day long, every day, whether we notice it or not. This is not something to be afraid of. It is actually a kind of freedom. Because if you are not permanently fixed as any one thing, then you are not permanently trapped by any one thing either. Not by your worst day. Not by your biggest mistake. Not by the story someone else once told you about who you are. The Buddha put it simply. He said, "Nothing is permanent." That might sound sad at first, but there is something kind about it. It means that pain is not permanent. Confusion is not permanent. Even the heavy feelings that sometimes sit on the chest like a stone, they too will pass. They are visitors. They come and they go. Many ancient cultures understood this. There is a teaching from the Navajo people, passed from elders to children for many generations. They say that every morning when the sun rises, it is not the same sun as yesterday. It is a brand new sun. It is born at dawn, lives for one day, and by evening it passes on, never to return. Picture a grandmother sitting with a small child at the edge of the desert as the sky begins to lighten. As the first light appears, she says to the child, "Look, that sun has never risen before. It is young, and this is its only day." The child watches. The grandmother continues, "You must live this day in a beautiful way, so that the sun will not have wasted its precious light on you." This teaching does not demand perfection. It does not ask you to achieve anything extraordinary. It simply asks you to honor the day, to notice the light while it is here. Imagine waking each morning with this understanding, not as a pressure, but as an invitation. The sun is new. The day is new. And maybe, just for today, you are new too. This is very close to what the Buddha was pointing toward when he spoke about impermanence. Not as a reason to worry, but as a reason to pay attention. To be here. To notice this breath, this moment, because it will not come again exactly like this. In the ancient Mayan tradition, there is a similar idea. The Mayans believed that every hour of the day was its own spirit, with its own character and purpose. Time was not just a line moving forward. It was alive. And there is an old Mayan verse that speaks to identity in a way that still feels true today. It goes something like this. If you were to walk deep into an ancient temple, down to where the old ones are buried, and if you were asked which of these bones belonged to which ruler, what could you say? You would have to admit that you did not know, because in the end, the greatest and the least return to the same quiet earth. This is a gentle reminder. The titles and roles we hold so tightly are, in the long view, temporary. Not meaningless, but temporary. And knowing they are temporary can actually help us hold them more lightly. You can be a parent and still know that parent is not the deepest truth of who you are. You can love your work and still know that your work is not all of you. You can carry your name and your history and your plans for the future and hold all of it with a lighter touch because you know there is something underneath all of it that does not come and go. Something steady, something quiet, something that was here before the roles began and will still be here when they change again. In the West, when we meet someone new, the first question is almost always the same. What do you do? It is so common that we barely notice it. But the question reveals something important about how we build identity. We tend to define ourselves by our work, our productivity, our output. I am a teacher. I am an engineer. I am a stay-at-home parent. And when that work changes, or when it is taken away, it can feel as though we have lost ourselves entirely, because we place so much of who we are into what we do. In many Eastern cultures, the question is different. In parts of the Buddhist world and in Hindu traditions, the more common question is not what you do, but what you follow. What path do you walk? What practice do you keep? What is sacred to you? There is a story about a traveler from Europe who arrived in a village in the East many years ago. He was eager to introduce himself, as people do. He approached one of the village elders and said, "I am a merchant. I trade in cloth and spices." The elder nodded politely. "I see. And what else?" "What else?" The merchant said, "That is what I do. That is who I am." The elder smiled. "That is what keeps you busy. But what do you love? What do you turn toward when the day is done and the trading is over?" The merchant stood there for a moment, unsure of himself. No one had ever asked him that before. He had spent so many years defining himself by what he sold that he had forgotten to ask himself what he kept. The elder was not being unkind. He was simply asking a different kind of question, not about the surface of a person's life, but about the center of it. And this is really what the Buddhist path invites us to look at. Not the roles we play on the outside, but what remains when those roles are set down. Not the labels, but the one underneath them. This is not about religion in the way we usually think of it. It is more like asking, what do you turn toward when everything else falls away? It is a question about the center of a person, not the surface. There is a well-known teaching in Buddhism called anatta, which simply means not self. It does not mean that you do not exist. It means that the fixed, solid self you think you are is more flexible than you realize. You are not one thing. You are not stuck. The stories you carry about who you are, they are just stories. They can be set down. This is a relief if you let it be. Because most of us carry stories that are heavy. Stories about what happened to us. Stories about what we failed at. Stories about who we should have been by now. And the teaching of the Buddha is that none of those stories are the final word. There is always more room than the story allows. And this brings us back to the question that runs through everything we are exploring tonight. Who are you, really? Not your job, not your name, not your role in someone else's story, but the one who is here, right now. The Buddha called this our true nature. He said it was always present, always available, but often hidden beneath layers of habit, worry, and distraction. Like the sky behind the clouds. The clouds move and change, and sometimes they are thick and dark. But the sky itself never changes. It is always there, waiting. Let us explore another story. In an old monastery in the mountains, a young monk once approached his teacher with a question. He had been practicing meditation for several years. He sat every morning before dawn in the cold meditation hall. He did everything he was told. He followed every instruction, and still he was frustrated. Every time he sat, his mind was full of noise, plans, old conversations, worries about things that had not happened yet. One morning, after a particularly restless sitting, he found his teacher in the garden, sweeping leaves from the stone path. "I have been sitting for years," the young monk said, "and I still do not know who I am." The old teacher stopped sweeping. He looked at the young monk for a long time. Then he smiled. "Good," he said. The young monk was confused. "Good? How is that good? I came here to find myself, and I have found nothing." "The one who does not know," the teacher said, "is closer to the truth than the one who is certain. Certainty closes the door. Not knowing leaves it open." The young monk was not sure what to do with this. He bowed and walked away. He sat with those words for many days. At first, they frustrated him even more. He wanted clarity. He wanted to be able to say, "I am this." But slowly, something began to soften. He stopped trying so hard to find a fixed answer. He stopped comparing himself to the other monks. And in that softening, something opened. A quiet space behind all the noise. A sense of ease that had nothing to do with knowing anything at all. It had been there the whole time. He had just been too busy searching to notice. This is close to what the great Buddhist teacher, Kalu Rinpoche, once said. He said, "You live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality, but you do not know this. When you understand, you will see that you are nothing. And being nothing, you are everything. That is all. When you understand, you will see that you are nothing. And being nothing, you are everything. That is all." So what does all of this mean for us tonight? It means that whoever you were today, whoever you have been this week or this year, that is not the whole picture. Beneath the roles and the routines and the busyness, there is something quieter, something that does not need to be fixed or improved, something that has been here all along. You do not need to find it. You do not need to earn it. You only need to stop long enough to notice it. And that is really what meditation is. It is not about becoming a different person. It is not about clearing the mind or reaching some special state. It is about resting in the one you already are, beneath the layers. The Buddha said that this is our birthright. Not something we strive for, but something we return to, the way water returns to stillness when you stop stirring it. There is a phrase in the Zen tradition called beginner's mind. It means approaching each moment as if it were the first time. You have never lived this exact moment before. You have never drawn this exact breath. Beginner's mind is not about forgetting what you know. It is about being willing to see things fresh, even in the most familiar places. So here is a small practice to carry with you. At some point in the days ahead, in the middle of whatever you are doing, pause, just for a moment, and ask yourself, gently, without needing an answer, who am I right now? Not my name, not my role, but who is here? You do not need to figure it out. Just ask the question and let it sit. See what happens in the space that opens when you stop trying to be anyone at all. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Notice how you are feeling right now. And whenever you are ready, we will continue together. A group of meditators had been sitting in silence for 3 months. Every day, from early morning until late at night, they practiced. They followed their breath. They watched their thoughts come and go. They sat through restlessness and doubt and boredom and stillness. Some of them felt they had touched something deep. Others were not sure. But all of them had given everything they had. On the final day, a visiting Zen master arrived. He was very old. He wore formal robes and carried a heavy wooden staff. He sat down at the front of the hall and looked out at the rows of tired, hopeful faces. "So," he said, "you have been sitting here, watching your breath, observing your mind, for 3 months." They nodded. He lifted his staff and brought it down hard against the floor. The sound rang through the hall. "No good," he said. "This will not get you enlightened." No one moved. No one breathed. 3 months of effort, and the old master had dismissed it in a single sentence. You can imagine what that room felt like. Some people looked down. Others looked confused. A few looked angry. Then he paused. His voice softened. "Only one question matters," he said. He struck his staff once more. "What is this? What is this life? What is this?" He looked around the room, from face to face. He was not being cruel. If anything, there was kindness in his eyes. He was trying to wake them up to something that all those months of careful practice had somehow missed. "You can watch your breath for 100 years, he said. "But if you do not ask this question, you are only sitting. You are not seeing." Then he stood up, tucked his staff under his arm, and walked out. The meditators sat there, stunned. Some of them were upset, but others felt something stir. A kind of curiosity they had not felt in weeks. Not about technique or method or how to sit better, but about something much more basic. What is this? What is this experience of being alive? In Zen Buddhism, this kind of question is sometimes called a havwadu or a koan. It is not a riddle to be solved with cleverness. It is more like a doorway. You do not figure it out. You walk through it. What is this? Is not asking for a scientific answer. It is not asking you to name things or explain how the body works or where thoughts come from. It is asking something much more simple and much more strange. It is asking you to notice that you are here at all. Right now, you are conscious. You are aware. Something in you is listening to these words, and that something is alive. That is extraordinary, if you stop to think about it. Out of all the ways the universe could have arranged itself, here you are. Aware, present, breathing. The Buddha taught that a human life is rare and precious. He compared it to a sea turtle that surfaces once every 100 years in a vast ocean. Floating somewhere on that ocean is a single wooden ring. The chance of the turtle surfacing with its head through that ring, the Buddha said, is about the same as the chance of being born as a human being. That is how rare this is. This teaching is not meant to create pressure. It is meant to create appreciation. When you understand how unlikely this all is, the small things start to matter more. A conversation with someone you care about. A meal eaten slowly. An evening where nothing happens, and that is perfectly fine. These are not small things. They are the whole point. Not to frighten you, but to remind you that this moment, this breath, this awareness, it is not ordinary. It only seems ordinary because it happens every day. There is something about new life that brings this mystery close. In a Buddhist tradition on a small island in Southeast Asia, when a child is born, he is not allowed to touch the ground for the first 3 months. He is held, passed gently from one pair of arms to another, cradled and carried by the family and the community around him. For those first 3 months, his feet never meet the earth. Imagine that. For 3 months, a child is carried by the people who love him. His grandmother holds him in the morning. His aunt carries him through the afternoon. His father rocks him in the evening. He is never put down. He is never left alone on the ground. He moves through the world entirely held. Then, after 3 months, there is a small ceremony. The family gathers. Food is prepared. And for the first time, gently and carefully, the sole of the child's foot is placed on the ground. Everyone watches. It is a moment. It is a way of saying, this being has just arrived from somewhere else. He is still close to wherever he came from, and that closeness deserves respect. You do not rush it. You let him land slowly. In that same tradition, they say that the very new and the very old are the ones closest to the sacred. The ones just arriving and the ones preparing to leave. The ones furthest from it, they say with a smile, are the ones in the middle, busy with their responsibilities and their plans. There is a similar feeling in a story told in parts of India about what happens just before a child is born. They say that while still in the womb, the child remembers everything. She remembers where she came from. She remembers the vast peace she is leaving behind. And she sings a quiet song. Do not let me forget. Do not let me forget who I am. But then she is born. The bright world rushes in. Sounds and light and cold air and warmth. And the song changes. Oh, she sings. I am forgetting already. It is a tender story. Not sad, really. More like a gentle recognition that being human means forgetting. We forget our original nature. We forget the peace we came from. We get caught up in names and tasks and worries. And then, if we are lucky, something reminds us. A quiet moment, a question, a breath. This is actually a very old idea in Buddhist thought. The Buddha taught that our true nature is not something we need to build or create. It is already here. It has always been here. But it gets covered over, like a jewel buried under layers of dust. The jewel does not stop being a jewel just because it is hidden. It only needs to be uncovered. That is what meditation is, in the Buddhist understanding. It is not learning something new. It is remembering something old. The Zen master's question, "What is this?" works because it brings us back to that place before the forgetting. Before we decided who we were, before the labels, before the opinions and the habits and the stories, just this, just here, just alive. And there is something worth noticing about how the Zen master asked it. He did not give a lecture. He did not explain a theory. He asked a question and then left it open. That is very much the Zen way. In Zen, the teaching is often not in the answer. It is in the space the question opens. A well-known Zen saying puts it this way: in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. When we think we already know what life is, when we have it all figured out, the aliveness drains out of it. But when we are willing to not know, to sit with the question instead of rushing to the answer, something opens up. The world becomes vivid again. Think about a time when something surprised you. Maybe you walked outside and the sky was a color you were not expecting. Or someone said something that caught you off guard in a good way. In that moment, before your mind could label it or judge it, there was just pure experience. Just this. That is what the Zen master was pointing to. A Buddhist teacher who had spent many years studying the world's spiritual traditions once decided to do something unusual. He sat down and read an entire encyclopedia of world religions, cover to cover. Every tradition, every culture, every story about how the world began, about what is good and what is not, about what happens when we are born and what happens when this life is over. When he finished, someone asked him, "After all of that, what did you learn?" He thought for a moment. Then he said, "Every tradition had a beautiful story. They were not all the same story, but the best of them did the same thing. They pointed back to a mystery that the stories themselves could never fully explain. The stories were like a screen placed over something vast, and none of them, no matter how beautiful, could capture exactly what that vastness was." He paused, then added, "The ones that came closest were the ones that admitted they could not capture it." That honesty is something you find again and again in Buddhist teaching. The Buddha did not claim to have explained everything. He pointed. He showed a direction. And then he said, in effect, walk it yourself. See for yourself. Do not take my word for it. This is something Buddhism is very honest about. The Buddha himself said that his teachings were like a raft. You use the raft to cross the river. But once you reach the other shore, you do not carry the raft on your back. You set it down. The teachings are tools, not the truth itself. They point toward something. But the something they point toward is beyond words and ideas. It has to be felt. It has to be lived. It cannot be captured in a book, or a lecture, or even the most beautiful story. This is why, in Zen, a teacher will sometimes say things that make no logical sense, or answer a question with silence, or clap their hands instead of speaking. They are not being difficult. They are saying, the answer is not in the words. The answer is here, in this room, in this breath, in the space between us. Stop looking at the finger and look at what it is pointing toward. And that is why meditation matters. Because meditation is not about thinking more clearly. It is about touching the thing that comes before thinking. The awareness underneath the thoughts. The aliveness underneath the busy mind. When you sit quietly and let everything settle, you may notice that the breath breathes on its own. You did not start it. You cannot stop it for long. It just happens. The heart beats on its own. Thoughts appear on their own. You do not invite them. They just arrive, do their thing, and leave. There is something humbling about this. So much of what keeps us alive happens without our permission or control. The body knows what to do. It has always known. We are being breathed. We are being lived. And there is something restful in recognizing that. In letting go of the feeling that we have to manage everything. And if you stay with that long enough, you begin to sense something underneath all of it. A kind of presence. A spaciousness. Not empty in a cold way, but open in a warm way. Like a clear sky. Like still water. The Buddha called this awareness itself. Not the contents of the mind, but the space in which the contents appear. Not the waves, but the ocean. A woman once traveled alone to the mountains of Central Asia, searching for something she could not quite name. She had tried meditation at home but found it difficult. Her mind was restless. She was not sure she was doing it right. She had read books about Buddhism and listened to talks, but something was missing. The words made sense, but they had not reached her yet. One evening, she heard about a ceremony happening farther up in the mountains. She followed a narrow trail for several miles, climbing higher as the light faded. The air grew thinner and cooler. The trees gave way to rock and open sky. When she reached a small valley, she found 12 old Buddhist monks sitting in a circle around a large fire. They were chanting quietly. The flames rose and fell. The sound of their voices carried across the still air. It was a scene that looked like it could have taken place 1,000 years ago. And then she noticed something else. All around the monks, in a wide circle, sat dozens of birds. They were perfectly still, facing the fire, facing the monks, as if they too were part of the ceremony. No one had called them. No one had placed them there. They had simply come. She stood at the edge of the valley and watched. She did not understand the chanting. She did not know what the ceremony was for. But something in her settled. Something that had been restless for a long time went quiet. Not because she figured anything out, but because, for the first time, she was not trying to figure anything out. She was just there, present, watching. Later, she would say that was the moment she understood what Buddhist practice was really about. It was not about getting her mind to be still. It was about recognizing that there is a stillness already here, in the world, in the body, in the spaces between things. She did not need to create it. She only needed to notice it. And that is really the heart of what the old Zen master was asking. What is this? Is not a problem to solve. It is an invitation to wake up to what is already here. The mystery of being conscious. The strangeness and beauty of having a body, of hearing sounds, of feeling the air against your skin. The great Zen teacher Dogen once wrote, To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be awakened by all things. When we stop asking, "Who am I?" with the expectation of a fixed answer, and instead just open our eyes and our ears and our hearts, the world itself begins to teach us. A bird outside the window, the sound of rain, the warmth of another person nearby. These are not separate from the question. They are the answer, always unfolding, always new. In Buddhism, this is sometimes called Suchness. Things as they are, before we add our opinions about them. Just this cup, just this breath, just this moment. Nothing missing, nothing extra. Not life as we wish it were or fear it might become. Just life as it actually is, right now. There is a Zen story about a student who asked his teacher, "What is the highest truth of Buddhism?" The teacher said, "You would not believe me if I told you." "Please," the student said, "I will believe you. Tell me." The teacher smiled. "The highest truth is this. Have you eaten your breakfast?" "Yes," the student said. "Then go wash your bowl." That is suchness. Not somewhere else. Not in some special state. Just here. In the most ordinary things. In the bowl. In the washing. In the breathing and the being. The Zen master did not need the meditators to find the right words. He needed them to stop looking for words at all, and instead to feel the aliveness of being here. What is this? You do not need to answer with your mind. Something deeper already knows. Let us rest here for a moment. There is no need to hold on to anything. Just breathe and let these words settle in their own time. Whenever you are ready, we will continue. The Buddha once said something that sounds almost too simple. He said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Most of us find it easier to see the goodness in others than in ourselves. And even seeing it in others can be hard, depending on the day. We get busy. We get distracted. We look at people and see their roles, their jobs, their faces, but not much deeper than that. But every now and then, something breaks through. A moment of real contact. A moment where you see someone or something clearly. And what you see is not a role or a label. It is something alive and whole and much bigger than any name could hold. These moments do not happen because we try harder. They happen because, for just a second, we stop trying at all. We simply look. Let us explore a story about this. Some years ago, a small group of visitors was invited to spend time with a great ape at a wildlife sanctuary. She was a large, gentle creature who had been taught to communicate through hand signs. Over the years, she had learned hundreds of signs and could hold simple conversations with the people who cared for her. She could ask for food. She could express whether she was happy or sad. She could name colors and objects and even tell you about her feelings. On this particular day, one of the visitors brought along her young granddaughter. She was about 7 or 8 years old, with her hair pulled back and a simple dress with a floral print, small pink and red flowers across the fabric. The girl was a little nervous. She stayed close to her grandmother as they walked across the grounds toward the enclosure. The ape was sitting calmly, watching them approach. When they were close enough, she looked at the group for a moment. Then she raised her hands and signed 2 words, "Pretty flowers." The visitors looked around. There were no flowers anywhere nearby. No garden, no vase, nothing blooming. Just grass and concrete and a few trees. The ape signed again, more deliberately this time. "Pretty flowers." Then someone looked at the little girl. The floral dress. The ape was looking right at her. She had noticed the flowers on the fabric, and she had something to say about it. Everyone laughed. Not because it was funny, exactly, but because it was startling. Here was a being that most people would consider entirely different from us, separated by millions of years of evolution, and she was noticing beauty. She was seeing the flowers and choosing to say something kind about them. She saw a child and offered a compliment. Just like that, without being asked, without any reason other than that she noticed, and she wanted to share what she noticed. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that awareness and kindness are not separate things. When you truly see something clearly, compassion naturally follows. You do not have to force it. You do not have to try to be kind. If you see clearly enough, kindness is just what is there. The ape did not know anything about Buddhism, but she saw clearly. She looked at the little girl and noticed something beautiful, and she said so. And this raises a question worth sitting with. How often do we look at the people around us and actually see them? Not their clothes, not their titles, not the expression they are wearing for the day, but them, the being underneath all of that. The Buddha taught that every being has what he called Buddha nature. It is the capacity for awareness, for compassion, for wisdom. It is not something that belongs only to monks or teachers or special people. It belongs to everyone. It is in the ape signing "pretty flowers." It is in the child wearing the dress. It is in you, right now, listening. There is another story from a different kind of encounter that points to the same thing. A couple once had the chance to swim with 2 dolphins in a warm bay somewhere in the tropics. It was not a performance. There were no hoops to jump through, no whistles, no tricks. The dolphins were simply there, free to come and go as they pleased. And they chose to come close. The couple waded into the shallow water and waited. After a few minutes, the 2 dolphins approached. They moved slowly, smoothly, circling at first and then coming alongside. One of the dolphins came very close to the man. She turned on her side and looked directly at him with one large, dark eye. He stood still. He did not know what to do. So he just looked back. He said later that it was one of the most powerful moments of his life. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because of the quality of the attention he felt coming from this creature. He said it was like being looked at by someone who had no judgment at all. No opinion about who he was or what he had done or whether he was good enough. Just pure open presence. Just one being, seeing another. And then the dolphin let him take hold of her fin, and she pulled him gently through the water, around the bay, slowly, easily. He said the feeling was overwhelming, like being with a being of pure joy. Not performing joy, not trying to be happy, just radiating it, naturally, the way the sun gives off heat. He said he thought of some of the great Buddhist teachers he had studied with, the ones who seemed so fully present and so completely at ease in the world. The dolphin had that same quality, not wisdom in the way we usually think of it, but a kind of aliveness that was so full it spilled over into everything around it. There is something that happens in moments like these. The usual walls come down. The usual categories dissolve. You are not a person and an animal. You are not a visitor and a creature in a sanctuary. You are two living beings meeting each other in the present moment. And what you find there is a kind of recognition, not of facts or names or histories, but of aliveness itself. You see it in them, and they see it in you. This is what the Buddhist tradition calls meeting in awareness. It happens between humans and animals, and it happens between humans and humans too. It happens whenever two beings stop performing and simply show up. No masks, no roles, just presence meeting presence. And when it happens, even briefly, it changes something. It reminds you that underneath all the complexity of daily life, there is something very simple going on. Beings are meeting. Hearts are touching. Life is recognizing itself. A contemplative Christian monk who spent many years in silence and prayer, and who also studied Buddhist meditation deeply, once wrote about a similar experience. But for him, it was not with animals. It was with ordinary people on a street. He described standing on a busy corner in a city one afternoon, watching people walk by. Hundreds of strangers, going about their day, carrying bags, checking the time, talking, rushing. The usual scene. And suddenly, he saw them differently. He wrote that it was as if he could see the beauty of their hearts. Not the surface, not the tired faces or the distracted looks, but something underneath, the deep goodness at the core of every person walking past him, a goodness that they themselves did not know was there. He said that if we could truly see each other this way, if we could see past the surface and into that hidden beauty, there would be no more need for cruelty or greed. We would simply be amazed by one another. He even said, with a kind of gentle humor, that the biggest problem would be that we would want to bow down and honor each other right there on the street. What is striking about this is that he did not do anything special to see it. He did not perform a ritual or reach some advanced state. He had simply been living a life of quiet attention for many years. And one afternoon, the attention bore fruit. The filter dropped, and he saw what was already there. This is not a fantasy. It is what becomes possible when the mind gets quiet and the heart opens. It is what meditation slowly uncovers. In Buddhist teaching, this way of seeing is called clear seeing, or sometimes right view. It does not mean seeing things the way we want them to be. It means seeing things as they actually are, without the filters of habit and judgment and fear. And when you see people clearly, what you find is almost always more beautiful than what you expected. Think about someone you love, a child, a partner, a friend. Think about a moment when you looked at them and really saw them. Not because they did anything special. Maybe they were just sitting there, or sleeping, or reading. But something in you opened, and for a moment you saw them whole, just as they are. And what you felt was not complicated. It was just love. That is clear seeing. And the Buddhist teaching is that this is available not just with the people we already love, but with everyone, even with people we find difficult, even with ourselves, especially with ourselves. The Buddha was very direct about this. He said, "You can search the whole world over, and you will never find anyone more deserving of your love than yourself." This is not selfishness. It is the foundation. Because you cannot truly care for others if you have not first learned to care for yourself. And caring for yourself begins with something very simple. It begins with the body. In Buddhist meditation, one of the first things we learn is to pay attention to the body, not to judge it, not to wish it were different, but to notice it, to feel what is actually here, the weight of the hands resting in the lap, the rise and fall of the chest, the places that are tight and the places that are at ease, the temperature of the air on the skin. This might sound small, but there is a deep kindness in it. Most of us spend our days ignoring the body or pushing it to do more. We sit hunched at desks for hours. We eat without tasting. We lie down at night and are surprised to find that our shoulders have been clenched all day. We treat the body like a machine that should just keep running. We forget that it is alive, that it feels, that it is carrying us through every moment of every day without complaint. When you sit in meditation and bring gentle attention to the body, something begins to shift. The body responds to being noticed. Tension that has been held for a long time, sometimes for years, begins to soften. Not because you forced it to, but because attention itself is a kind of care. The Buddha taught that the body is the first foundation of mindfulness. He placed it before thoughts, before emotions, before anything else. Because the body is always here. It does not live in the past or the future. It lives right now. And when we come back to the body, we come back to the present moment. We come back to what is actually true, right here, right now. There is a Buddhist teaching that says, if you cannot care for this body, how can you care for anyone else? It starts here. Kindness starts here. With these hands, this breath, this heartbeat. And as the body softens, the heart follows. This is something that surprises many people when they begin to meditate. They sit down expecting peace and quiet, and instead they find feelings. Old feelings. Feelings they did not know were still there. Grief that was never fully felt. Tenderness that was tucked away. Joy that got lost in the busyness. Gratitude that never found its moment. These things live in the body. And when the body begins to open, they come forward. Gently. In their own time. This is not a problem. In Buddhism, this is considered a natural and healthy part of the path. The heart has its own intelligence. It knows what it needs to release and what it needs to feel. And the invitation of meditation is simply to let it happen with as much kindness as you can. It takes courage to let the heart open. Most of us have spent years building walls around it, for good reason. The world can be hard, and the walls helped us get through. But those walls also keep the good things out. The love, the connection, the beauty. They keep everything out. Meditation does not tear the walls down. That would be too much, too fast. It simply creates the conditions for them to soften on their own. Breath by breath, sitting by sitting. Over time, the Buddha compared the open heart to a lotus flower. The lotus grows in muddy water. Its roots are deep in the mud, but the flower itself rises above the surface, clean and whole. It does not avoid the mud. It grows through it. And that is what the heart does too. It does not need perfect conditions to open. It opens through whatever is here, through sadness, through confusion, through ordinary, unremarkable days. This is why the lotus is such an important symbol in Buddhism. It is not a flower that grows in a perfect garden. It grows in a swamp, and yet it blooms. The beauty of the heart is like that. It does not require a perfect life. It does not wait until everything is sorted out and comfortable. It grows where it is planted, through whatever conditions are present. And the more you let it grow, the more you find that your capacity for kindness is much larger than you thought. Not just for the people close to you, but for strangers, for difficult people, for the world, even for yourself on your hardest days. There is a well-known verse in Zen Buddhism that says, "From the beginning, not a thing is." It sounds strange at first, but what it means is that before we layer our judgments and opinions and categories onto the world, what is here is simply open, simply alive, simply present. The ape saw a little girl and said, "Pretty flowers." The dolphin looked at a stranger and offered pure attention. The monk stood on a street corner and saw the hidden beauty in every person walking by. These are not miracles. They are moments of clear seeing. Moments when the usual filters fell away and what remained was simply what was true. And they are available to all of us, not just on special occasions, but in ordinary life, at the kitchen table, on a walk, in a quiet moment before sleep. The Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who spent his life teaching mindfulness and compassion, said it this way: "The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth, dwelling deeply in the present moment and feeling truly alive." And this is what the Buddhist path is really about. Not becoming someone special, not achieving something extraordinary, but learning to see what is already here. The goodness, the beauty, the aliveness in every being, including you. The question we began this evening with, "Who are you, really?" finds part of its answer here. You are not just your thoughts and your worries and your plans. You are also this capacity to see beauty, this capacity to feel kindness, this quiet awareness that is here right now, breathing, being. Let us take a moment here. There is nothing to do. Just notice what is present. And when you feel ready, we will gently continue. Many years ago, somewhere in the forests of East Africa, a foreign traveler hired a group of local porters to help him carry supplies through the wilderness. He was in a hurry. He had a destination in mind and a schedule to keep, and he pushed the group hard. They left before sunrise each morning and walked until the light was nearly gone. Day after day, the same pace. No rest beyond what was strictly necessary. The porters did not complain. They kept up. They carried the heavy loads on their shoulders and backs without argument. They moved through the forest in single file, stepping over roots and stones, crossing streams, climbing ridges. They were strong and capable, and the traveler was pleased with the progress. But on the third or fourth morning, when the traveler woke and began packing up camp, the porters did not move. They sat where they were, some of them leaning against trees, others resting with their eyes half closed. Their bundles were on the ground beside them. "Come," the traveler said. "We need to go." No one stood up. The traveler offered extra pay. They shook their heads. He offered more. They refused. He grew frustrated. They were so close to the destination now. Another 2 days, maybe less. "Why will you not walk?" he asked. One of the porters, an older man with a calm face, looked up at him. "We have walked too fast," he said. "Now we must wait for our souls to catch up." The traveler did not understand, but he had no choice. He sat down too, and in the hours that followed, as the forest sounds filled the silence around him, something in him began to settle. Something he had not even noticed was wound tight, slowly began to release. There is something in that line worth sitting with. We have walked too fast. Now we must wait for our souls to catch up. Most of us know what that feels like, even if we have never put it into words. The feeling of moving through days so quickly that something important gets left behind. Not a bag or a set of keys, but something deeper. A sense of being connected to your own life. A sense of being present in it, rather than just rushing through it. The Buddha noticed this too, over 2,000 years ago. He saw that human beings have a tendency to chase after things. We chase after pleasure. We chase after success. We chase after security. And in all that chasing, we lose contact with where we actually are. We are always leaning forward, reaching for what comes next, and missing what is here. One of the simplest teachings in Buddhism is this: stop. Just stop. Not forever. Not dramatically. But regularly, gently, stop moving and feel where you are. That is what the porters were doing. They were not being lazy. They were being wise. An American philosopher once wrote that the soul grows by subtraction, not by addition. We tend to think that the good life is about gaining more. More knowledge, more experience, more things, more accomplishments. But this philosopher saw it differently. He said that what the soul needs is less. Less noise, less rushing, less clutter. And in that less, something essential has room to return. This lines up closely with Buddhist teaching. The Buddha did not ask his students to add more to their lives. He asked them to let go. Let go of grasping. Let go of the need to control. Let go of the constant commentary in the mind that tells you things should be different than they are. This is one of the things that makes Buddhism unusual. Many traditions ask you to do more, believe more, commit to more. Buddhism asks you to release, to simplify, to set things down. The Zen tradition especially values this kind of simplicity. A Zen monastery is a bare, clean place. Not because beauty does not matter, but because when there is less to look at, you begin to see more clearly. Meditation is not about adding a new activity to your schedule. It is about creating a gap in the schedule. A space where nothing is being produced, nothing is being achieved, and nothing is being fixed. And in that space, something natural begins to happen. The body relaxes. The breath deepens. The mind, after its initial protest, begins to quiet. It is not that the noise disappears completely. It is more that you stop feeding it. You stop picking up every thought and running with it. You let the thoughts come and go, and after a while, the spaces between them grow wider. And those spaces are where the peace lives. Not in the absence of thought, but in the willingness to let thought be, without getting involved in everyone, But here is the honest part. When you first sit down and get quiet, the mind does not cooperate. Not right away. Anyone who has tried meditation knows this. You sit down. You close your eyes. You try to follow your breath. And within about 3 seconds, the mind is off. It is replaying a conversation from yesterday. It is planning dinner. It is worrying about something that may never happen. It is composing an email you forgot to send. It is humming a song you heard in the car. In Buddhist teaching, this is completely normal. The mind thinks. That is what it does. A Buddhist master in the Thai forest tradition once compared the mind to a monkey in a tree, swinging from branch to branch. You cannot stop a monkey from swinging, but you can learn to watch it without swinging along with it. This is one of the most helpful things Buddhism has to offer. The idea that you do not have to believe every thought you think. Thoughts arise on their own. You did not choose most of them. They just showed up. And if you can learn to watch them arrive and leave without getting pulled into every one, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice that there is a part of you that is not thinking. A part of you that is simply aware. Let us explore a story about this. A woman had been meditating for about a year when she went on her first silent retreat. She was nervous but hopeful. She had heard that retreats could be powerful. She imagined herself sitting peacefully, her mind finally calm, the kind of stillness she had been chasing in her living room for months. It did not go that way. For 3 days, she sat and walked, trying to stay with her breath. But her mind would not stop. Stories poured through her. Worries about her children. Regrets about things she had said years ago. Arguments she kept replaying, finding better responses long after they mattered. Plans she kept making and remaking. Fantasies about what she would eat when the retreat was over. Her mind was like a guest who would not leave, talking endlessly about nothing in particular. By the second evening, she was discouraged. She went to speak with the Buddhist teacher leading the retreat. "My mind will not stop talking," she said. "I sit down and it just goes on and on. I have tried everything. Counting breaths, watching thoughts, labeling them. Nothing works. I feel like I am failing at this." The teacher smiled. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What is the mind saying right now?" She paused. "Right now it is saying that I am failing." "And you notice that?" the teacher said. "You heard it say that. So tell me, who noticed?" She looked at him. She opened her mouth to answer and then stopped. She had not thought about it that way before. "The thoughts talk," the teacher said gently. "They are always talking. But there is someone listening. And the one who listens is not the thoughts. The one who listens is what we are looking for." This is one of the most important teachings in Buddhist meditation. There is a difference between the contents of the mind and the awareness that knows the contents. Thoughts come and go. Feelings come and go. Sensations come and go. But the awareness in which they all appear does not come and go. It is always here. Steady, open, quiet. A beloved Buddhist master in the Thai forest tradition called this the one who knows. He said it is always present, in every moment, in every situation. When you are happy, it knows you are happy. When you are sad, it knows you are sad. When the mind is busy, it knows the mind is busy. It does not judge. It does not interfere. It simply sees. He told his students, "You are not the anger. You are the one who sees the anger. You are not the fear. You are the one who sees the fear. Learn to rest in the one who sees." This is not a complicated teaching, but it can change everything. Because the moment you realize that you are the awareness and not the thought loses its power over you. It is still there, but it is no longer in charge. It is like stepping back from a painting and realizing you have been standing too close. The painting has not changed, but your relationship to it has. This teaching connects directly to the question we have been sitting with all evening. Who are you, really? Not the thoughts, not the feelings, not the endless stories the mind tells, but the one who is aware of all of it, the quiet presence behind the noise. There is a poem, very old, by a Spanish writer that captures this beautifully. He writes about a self that is not the self we usually identify with. He describes someone who walks beside him, someone he does not always see. This other self, he says, is the one who stays silent when he talks, the one who forgives when he is harsh, the one who goes for a walk when he is stuck indoors, the one who will still be here when everything else has changed. It is a strange idea at first, that the truest part of us might be the one we pay the least attention to, not the loud voice in the head, not the one making plans and judgments and complaints, but the quiet one underneath, the one who has been here all along, patiently waiting for us to notice. We spend so much of our lives listening to the noisy self, the one that says, "I need to do more," or "I am not good enough," or "What if something goes wrong?" That voice feels so real, so urgent, that we rarely question it. We assume it is who we are. But Buddhism says otherwise. Buddhism says that voice is just weather. It passes. What remains is the sky. In Zen Buddhism, there is a phrase for this deeper self. They call it original face. A Zen teacher might ask a student, "What was your face before your parents were born?" It sounds like nonsense, but it is pointing to something real. Before you had a name, before you had a story, before you had opinions and preferences and fears, there was something here. Something aware, something awake. That is your original face, and it has not changed since the day you arrived. It is worth saying that none of this means your thoughts and feelings are bad. They are not the enemy. Buddhism does not teach that the mind is a problem to be solved. It teaches that the mind is a tool to be understood. Think of it this way. If you are sitting in a room and a radio is playing in the corner, you do not need to smash the radio. You do not need to fight with it or feel bad about the noise. You just need to realize that you are not the radio. You are the one listening to it. And once you know that, the noise bothers you much less. The same is true of the mind. Once you realize that thoughts are just thoughts, not facts, not orders, not the truth about who you are, they lose their grip. They keep playing, but you are no longer controlled by them. You can hear them without following them. You can let them pass without picking them up. The Buddha said, "In the scene, there is only the scene. In the herd, there is only the herd." He was saying that experience, at its most basic level, is just experience. A sound is just a sound. A feeling is just a feeling. It becomes suffering only when we add our stories to it. When we add, "This should not be happening," or "What does this mean about me?" or "How do I make this stop?" Without those additions, experience is just experience. Light, sound, sensation, coming and going on its own. This does not mean we stop caring. It does not mean we become cold or indifferent. It means we stop adding extra weight to things that are already heavy enough. We let a difficult moment be a difficult moment without turning it into a story about how our whole life is difficult. We let a sad feeling be a sad feeling without deciding it means something is permanently wrong. There is a Buddhist saying, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Pain is what happens. Suffering is the story we wrap around it. And the more we learn to see the difference, the lighter life becomes. And this brings us back to the porters, sitting quietly in the forest, waiting. They understood something that the traveler did not, that there is a speed at which the soul can travel, and it is slower than the body. You can push yourself across miles of ground and still feel like you have not arrived anywhere. Or you can sit still for 10 minutes and feel like you have come home. The porters did not need a teacher to tell them this. They knew it in their bones, and their knowing was its own kind of wisdom. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a word for this kind of homecoming. They call it samatha, which means tranquility or calm. It is not a special state reserved for advanced meditators. It is not something you earn after years of practice. It is the natural settling that happens when you stop stirring. There is a simple image for this. Picture a jar of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, the water stays cloudy. You cannot see through it. But if you set it down and leave it alone, the mud slowly sinks to the bottom and the water clears on its own. You do not have to do anything to the water. You do not have to filter it or fix it. You just have to stop shaking the jar. That is meditation. That is what the porters knew, sitting in the forest that morning. And that is what is available to anyone who is willing, even for a few minutes, to stop walking and let the soul catch up. You may have been walking fast for a long time. That is all right. You are here now. And the fact that you are here, listening, resting, breathing, means that something in you already knows what the porters knew. That sometimes the wisest thing you can do is sit down, set down the load, and wait. Let us pause here. You do not need to go anywhere. Just rest where you are. And whenever you feel ready, we will walk on together. One of the most well-known stories in all of Buddhism is the story of how the Buddha began his journey. Before he was the Buddha, he was a young prince. He lived in a palace surrounded by comfort. His father, the king, loved him dearly and, wanting to protect him from anything painful, made sure that the prince saw only beauty and ease. The gardens were always in bloom. The food was always plentiful. The people around him were always smiling. Musicians played in the courtyards. The rooms were cool in summer and warm in winter. Anything unpleasant was kept out of sight. The prince grew up in this sheltered world. He was intelligent, kind, and well-liked. He had everything a person could want, but something in him was restless. He could not name it. He simply felt, quietly and persistently, that there was something beyond the palace walls that he needed to see. Then one day, he asked to leave the palace grounds. His father reluctantly agreed and sent attendants to prepare the route and clear away anything disturbing. But life cannot be fully controlled, and the prince saw things that could not be hidden. He saw a person bent with age, moving slowly and with difficulty. He had never seen old age before. He turned to his companion and asked, "What has happened to that person?" His companion said, "He is old. This happens to everyone, in time." He saw someone who was very ill, lying by the side of the road. "What is wrong with him?" he asked. "He is sick," his companion said. "This too can happen to anyone." And he saw a funeral procession and understood for the first time that all lives come to an end. He was shaken, not because these things were unusual. They happen everywhere, every day, but because he had never been allowed to see them before. In a single afternoon, the protected world he had known fell away, and in its place was a much larger, much more honest picture of what it means to be human. That afternoon changed everything for him. It was the beginning of his search for a deeper truth, a truth that could hold all of life, not just the pleasant parts. This story is over 2,000 years old, but it still feels familiar, because in some way, most of us live in a palace of our own. When we are young, the world is small and mostly safe. Our parents, if we are fortunate, do their best to shield us from what is hard. We grow up believing that life is a certain way. And then, slowly or suddenly, we see beyond the walls. We realize that people struggle, that things do not always work out, that the world is more complicated and more tender than we were told. For some people, this happens in childhood. For others, it comes later. It might come through losing someone we care about, or through watching a friend go through something we cannot fix, or simply through paying attention to the world for the first time and realizing that not everyone is living the life we assumed. This does not have to be a single dramatic moment. It often happens gradually, across months or years. A friend goes through something difficult. We learn about problems in the world we had not noticed before. We begin to feel the weight of things we cannot fix. And we realize, quietly, that the palace walls were never going to hold forever. The Buddhist teaching does not say this is a tragedy. It says this is where real life begins. Because it is only when we see things clearly, including the hard parts, that we can respond to them with wisdom and care. Let us explore a story about this. There was a young man, about 17, who had always been a thoughtful person. He did well in school. He cared about his friends. He had grown up in a comfortable home where people were kind to one another. But over the course of one particular year, things shifted. A close friend of his began struggling with deep sadness. Another friend became caught up in habits that worried him. He began reading about the world more seriously, about the environment, about inequality, about the distance between how things are and how they could be. And the more he looked, the more he saw. He did not talk about it much, but his mother noticed. He was quieter than usual. He spent more time alone. One afternoon, she asked if he wanted to go for a walk. He said yes. They walked for a while without saying much. The evening was mild. Other people passed them on the path, joggers and dog walkers, and families out for a stroll. Ordinary life going on all around them. Then she said, gently, "You seem like you are carrying something heavy." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think I am just starting to see how hard things are for people. Not just for me. For everyone. Friends who are struggling and I cannot help them. Things happening in the world that do not seem fair. And I do not know what to do with that." His mother nodded. She did not rush to fix it or explain it away. She did not say, "It will be fine," or "Try not to think about it." She just walked beside him and let his words have room. After a while, she said, "That sounds like a lot. Do you think you can hold it? All of this that you are seeing?" He looked at her, and something in his face shifted. The heaviness was still there, but underneath it, something steady. "Of course I can," he said. And there was no bravado in it. No performance. Just a quiet knowing. I think this is just what it means to grow up. To see things as they are and not look away. His mother felt something open in her own chest when he said that. She realized he was not asking to be rescued. He was telling her he had arrived somewhere new. And he was all right. That moment, that quiet confidence, is something the Buddhist tradition values deeply. It is called the heart of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva, in Buddhism, is someone who sees the difficulty of the world and does not turn away. Not because they are fearless, not because they have no feelings, but because their heart is wide enough to hold what they see. There is a teaching in Mahayana Buddhism that says the bodhisattva makes a vow. The vow is simple but enormous. However many beings there are, I will work for their benefit. Not because one person can fix everything, but because the intention itself changes the person who holds it. It opens the heart. It gives life a direction. It turns pain into purpose. And here is the gentle part. You do not have to be a monk or a saint to have a bodhisattva heart. You just have to be someone who cares. Someone who sees a friend struggling and sits with them. Someone who notices a stranger having a hard day and offers a small kindness. Someone who does not look away when things are difficult, but stays present, even when it hurts. The Buddha did not run from what he saw outside the palace. He turned toward it. He sat with it. He let it break his heart open. And from that openness came a compassion so deep that it changed the course of history. This does not mean we have to solve everything. It does not mean we have to carry the weight of the whole world on our shoulders. The Buddhist teaching is actually quite gentle about this. It says, do what you can. Start where you are. And trust that kindness, even in small amounts, matters more than you think. The Buddha said, just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so too does this teaching have one taste. The taste of freedom. And that freedom does not come from avoiding difficulty. It comes from meeting it with an open heart. There is a practice that comes from the Buddhist tradition of looking at someone you know very well and seeing them fresh. Not as their role, not as the person you are used to, but simply as another being, here for a short while, sharing this life with you. A mother once described doing this with her son. Once a year, she said, they would sit together for a few minutes. Just sitting, facing each other, not talking, not doing anything. No phones, no distractions. Just two people looking at each other. At first it feels awkward, she said. He fidgets. I smile. He rolls his eyes a little, the way teenagers do. But we have done this for a few years now. and he knows the routine. So we settle in. After a minute or two, something shifts. I stop seeing my son. I still see him, but I also see something else. I see a person, a being, someone who arrived in this world just as I did, and who is trying to find his way just as I am. He has his own path, his own questions, his own way of seeing things that I will never fully understand. She paused, and in those moments, the usual relationship dissolves. Not in a painful way, in a freeing way. I am not his mother. He is not my child. We are just two people, looking at each other with nothing in between. No expectations, no roles, just this. And then, she said, I love him even more, because I am seeing him. Not the idea of him that I carry around in my head. Him. This is something Buddhist meditation teaches over and over, that our usual way of seeing is filtered. We look at people through layers of expectation and memory and habit. We see our partner and think we know them. We see our parents and think we know them. We see ourselves in the mirror and think we know what we are looking at. But we are looking at a story we made up, not the living person in front of us. We decided long ago who they are, and now we only see the decision. We miss the small changes, the new softness in their eyes, the way they have grown without our noticing. We miss the person because we are too busy seeing the label. Meditation slowly loosens those layers, not by force, by attention. The more you sit and simply look, the more the labels fall away. And what is left is always more interesting, more alive, more surprising than the label ever was. You discover that the people you thought you knew are actually full of things you have never noticed. And you discover that you are too. The Zen tradition has a beautiful phrase for this. They say, not knowing is most intimate. It sounds backwards. We usually think that knowing someone well is what makes us close. But Zen says the opposite. When you let go of what you think you know about someone, you actually come closer to them. The knowledge was a wall. The not knowing is a door. This is true with other people. And it is true with yourself. When you stop insisting that you know who you are, you make room for something truer and more alive to show itself. There is an ancient contemplative exercise found in several traditions that takes this even further. It asks you to imagine your own life, not as a straight line from past to future, but as something you can see all at once. Imagine yourself very young, a small child, just beginning to explore the world. Feel what that was like, the curiosity, the trust, the way a puddle or a leaf or a cardboard box could hold your attention for an hour. Everything was interesting. Everything was worth looking at. Now imagine yourself as a teenager, starting to see the world as it really is. Feeling the weight of things for the first time. Discovering that not everything is fair. Discovering that people you love can struggle. And feeling, alongside that heaviness, the first stirring of your own strength. Imagine yourself at the age you are now. With all the years behind you, the choices you made, the things that surprised you, the people who shaped you, the moments of grace and the moments of difficulty, all of it making up this one life that is yours. And now imagine yourself much older, sitting somewhere warm and comfortable, looking back on all of it. not with regret, not with pride, just with a kind of quiet recognition. Ah, yes, that was my life. That is what I lived. What does that older version of you see that the current version cannot? What would they want you to know? If you can hold all of these versions of yourself at the same time, even just for a moment, something shifts. You begin to see your life not as a series of problems to solve, but as a whole, a complete thing, with its own shape and rhythm and meaning. In Buddhism, this kind of seeing is connected to what is called the long view. It is the ability to step back from the urgency of any single moment and see the larger pattern. When you are inside a difficult time, it can feel like it will last forever. But from the long view, you can see that it is one chapter, one season, and there are other seasons ahead. This does not make the difficult moments less real, but it does make them less overwhelming. It gives them room to breathe. It gives you room to breathe. The young man on the walk with his mother was beginning to find this. He was stepping out of his palace. He was seeing things that could not be unseen. And he was discovering, just as the young prince did all those centuries ago, that he did not need to be protected from it. He was strong enough. His heart was wide enough. This is what the Buddhist path offers. Not a way to escape from the world, but a way to be in the world with your eyes open and your heart intact. The Buddha spent the rest of his life teaching this. After he left the palace, after he searched and struggled, and finally sat beneath a tree and found what he was looking for, he spent over 40 years walking from village to village, sharing what he had learned. And the essence of it was simple. Life includes difficulty. That is not a mistake. It is not punishment. It is just the nature of being alive. And within you, right now, is everything you need to meet it. Not with force, not with perfection, but with presence, with compassion, with the same quiet confidence the young man showed his mother on that walk. Of course I can hold this. This is what it means to be here. There is a verse often recited in Buddhist communities. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. And then it expands outward. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free from suffering. It starts with you, and then it includes everyone. That is the heart of the bodhisattva. That is the teaching the Buddha carried out of the palace and into the world. And it is the same teaching that lives in any person who looks at life honestly and says, with kindness, I see this, and I am here. Take a breath. Let everything soften for a moment. There is no hurry. Whenever you are ready, we will continue together. Here is something worth knowing. Every part of your body, every cell, every atom, was once inside a star. Not a small star, a vast, ancient one, burning long before the earth existed. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you are breathing right now, all of it was forged in the heart of that fire, billions of years ago. When the star eventually came apart, it scattered its material across the darkness. And from that scattered light, over an enormous stretch of time, everything we know took shape. The mountains, the oceans, the flowers and the birds, your hands, your eyes, the irises in your eyes. You are in a very real sense, made of starlight. This is not poetry. It is what happened. And when you sit with it long enough, it does something to the way you see yourself. Because if you and the mountains and the oceans and the trees all came from the same ancient source, then the separation we feel between ourselves and the rest of the world is not as solid as it seems. The boundaries we draw between self and other, between inside and outside, between me and everything else, those boundaries are useful. We need them to get through the day, but they are not the final truth. In Buddhism, this understanding has a name. It is called interdependence. Nothing exists entirely on its own. Everything is connected to everything else, all the way back to the beginning. The breath you just took contains air that has been breathed by countless beings before you. The water in your body has passed through rivers and clouds and roots and rain over and over since the beginning of the world. The Buddha said, "This is because that is. This arises because that arises." It is one of the simplest and most profound things he ever taught. Nothing stands alone. Everything leans on everything else. And when you begin to see this, something in you relaxes. Because you realize that you were never carrying this life by yourself. You have been held the entire time. You are not separate from life. You are life, looking at itself. An Indian teacher in the Advaita tradition, who was deeply respected by many Buddhist practitioners as well, once said something about this that is worth hearing. He noticed that people have a habit of identifying with almost anything. I am tired. I am angry. I am successful. I am a failure. Whatever thought passes through the mind, we grab hold of it and say, "That is me." He said, the habit of imagining yourself to be this or that is very strong in you. Whatever you think you are, you take it to be true. And then he asked a simple question. What if none of those things are what you really are? What if every label, every identity, every story you tell about yourself is just that, a story? Not false, exactly, but not the whole truth either. He was not trying to take anything away from people. He was trying to give them something bigger. He was saying, you are not the small, worried, busy self you think you are. You are something much vaster than that. But you will not see it as long as you keep clinging to the small picture. Let us explore a story about this. A man once went to see a Buddhist teacher because he was stuck. He had been through a difficult time in his life. He had lost his work. A relationship had ended. He felt like everything he had built was gone. I am a failure, he told the teacher. Everything I tried has fallen apart. The teacher listened carefully. Then she asked, when you say you are a failure, what do you mean? I mean that I tried and it did not work. My career, my relationship, none of it worked. So those things did not turn out as you hoped, the teacher said. I understand. That is painful. But you said you are a failure. Is that really true? Or is it a story you are telling about what happened? The man was quiet for a moment. Think of it this way, the teacher continued. You are sitting here right now. You are breathing. You are aware. You found your way to this room. You asked a real question. Does that sound like a failure to you? He did not answer, but something shifted in his face. The events of your life are not who you are, she said. They are things that happened. You are the one they happened to. And that one the one sitting here, is much larger than any single chapter of the story. This is what Buddhism means when it talks about not identifying with our experiences. It does not mean we stop feeling. It does not mean we pretend things do not matter. It means we learn to hold our experiences without being swallowed by them. We learn to say, "This happened," instead of, "This is who I am." This connects to something we have been exploring all evening, the question of who we really are. And here, the teaching goes one step deeper. Because the great mystery is not just that we do not know who we are. The great mystery is that knowing may not be the point. There is a teaching in Buddhist thought that puts it this way: if there is no mystery, there is no real spirituality. In other words, the traditions that try to explain everything, that try to wrap life up in a neat package, miss something essential. Because life is not neat. It is vast. It is strange. It is more extraordinary than any explanation can contain. And yet, we keep trying to contain it. We build theories. We create systems. We collect facts. And all of this is useful, up to a point. But there comes a moment when the facts run out and something else begins. Something that can only be met with silence and attention and a kind of humble wonder. The Zen tradition calls this the great doubt. Not doubt in the skeptical sense, but doubt in the sense of awe. The willingness to stand at the edge of what you know and look out into what you do not know and feel not afraid, but amazed. Think about it. You are conscious right now. You are aware. Something in you is experiencing this moment, and no one in the entire history of human thought has been able to fully explain what that is. Scientists can describe the brain. Philosophers can debate the nature of mind. But the raw fact of being aware, the felt experience of "I am here," remains a mystery. It is the most familiar thing in the world and the most unexplained. Buddhism does not try to solve this mystery. It asks you to enter it, to sit inside it, to let it surround you the way water surrounds a fish. The fish does not understand water. It does not need to. It lives in it, and you live in awareness. You always have. The Buddha himself was honest about this. He was asked many times about the great questions. What happens after this life? Is the universe infinite or finite? Is the self real or not real? And he often refused to answer, not because he did not know, but because the questions themselves were a trap. They pulled the mind into endless speculation, away from what was actually happening. He told a story about this. He said, "Imagine a person who has been struck by an arrow. A doctor comes to remove it, but the injured person says, 'Wait. Before you take it out, I need to know who made this arrow. What wood is the shaft carved from? What bird did the feathers come from? What village does the archer live in?' The Buddha said, 'By the time you have all the answers, the arrow has done its damage.' The point is not to understand everything first. The point is to take care of what is here. This is one of the most practical things about Buddhism. It does not ask you to believe in a theory about reality. It asks you to pay attention to reality, to be present to what is actually happening right now, in this body, in this breath. The mystery is not something to think about. It is something to live inside of. The Buddha said, deal with what is here. Be present to what is real. The mystery will take care of itself. This is a very different approach from what most of us are used to. We are trained to analyze, to figure things out, to understand before we trust. But Buddhist practice says, trust first. Be present first. Understanding will come, not as an idea in the mind, but as a felt sense in the whole body. Not as something you can explain to someone else, but as something you know the way you know how to breathe. There is a saying from the Ojibwe people of North America that captures something of this trust. They say, "Sometimes I go about pitying myself, and all the while I am being carried by great winds across the sky." Sit with that for a moment. Sometimes I go about pitying myself, and all the while, great winds are carrying me. We have all been there, caught in a small story about our own problems, convinced that things are harder than they should be, feeling stuck or lost or not enough. And meanwhile, something enormous is happening. Life is carrying us. The earth is turning. The seasons are changing. The universe is holding us in place with forces so vast we cannot even feel them. The heart is still beating. The lungs are still filling. The sun came up this morning without anyone asking it to. There is a whole world working to keep you here, and it has been doing so since the day you arrived. This is not about dismissing our feelings. Our struggles are real. They hurt. They matter. But there is a larger context, and when we remember it, the struggles soften. They do not disappear, but they take their proper size. They become one part of a much bigger picture. This is what the Buddhist teaching on perspective offers. Not denial, not avoidance, just a wider view. The ability to zoom out far enough to see that the difficult moment you are in is real, yes, but it is not all there is. It is not the whole sky. It is one cloud passing through. The Indian teacher we spoke about earlier summed all of this up in one of the most beautiful lines in all of spiritual literature. He said, "Wisdom says I am nothing. Love says I am everything. Between these two, my life flows." This is worth sitting with for a long time. It may be one of the truest things anyone has ever said about what it is like to be a human being. Wisdom says I am nothing, meaning when you look clearly at what you are, without the stories and the labels and the identities, you find that there is no fixed, solid thing there. You are not a thing. You are a process, a flow, an opening. In that sense, you are nothing you can point to or pin down. Love says I am everything, meaning when you open your heart fully, you realize that you are not separate from anything. The starlight in your bones connects you to the whole universe. The breath you share connects you to every living being. The compassion you feel for another person is not a bridge between two separate selves. It is one life recognizing itself. In that sense, you are everything. And between these two, my life flows. Not stuck in one or the other. Not frozen in emptiness or lost in fullness, but moving gently between them, held by both. This is not something to understand with the mind. It is something to feel. And if it does not land right now, that is fine. Some teachings need time. They sit quietly in you and do their work slowly, like seeds that take their own season to grow. One of the things that makes Buddhism so honest is its willingness to say, I do not know. In Zen especially, not knowing is not a failure. It is a kind of victory. Because the moment you stop pretending you have it all figured out, the moment you let go of the need to explain and control, something vast opens up. Space, breathing room, the freedom to simply be here without having to justify it or make sense of it. A Zen student once asked his teacher, "What is the meaning of the Buddha's teaching?" The teacher said, "Have you finished your tea?" "Yes," the student said. "Then wash your cup." The student stood there, confused. But the teacher was not being difficult. He was pointing to something the student had been overlooking. The meaning is not somewhere else. It is not hiding in a book or waiting at the end of a long journey. It is here, in the cup, in the washing, in the ordinary, quiet, mysterious act of being alive right now. You do not need to go to the Himalayas or sit in a cave for 30 years. The mystery is in your kitchen. It is in your breath. It is in the way the light falls through the window right now. You have never been separate from it. You have only been too busy to notice. Perhaps that is the deepest teaching of all, that the mystery is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived. Every tradition that has ever tried to capture it in words has come up against the same limit. The words point, but what they point toward is beyond words. It can only be experienced in silence, in attention, in the willingness to be here, just as you are, without needing anything to be different. The Buddha called this the unborn, the uncreated, the unformed. He said, if there were not this unborn, this uncreated, this unformed, there would be no escape from the world of the born, the created, the formed. In other words, there is something in you, in all of us, that is not made and cannot be unmade. It is not a thing. It is not a place. It is more like a space in which everything else happens. And it is always, always here. You do not need to find it. You are it. And the mystery is not that it is hidden. The mystery is that it is so close, so present, so ordinary, that we keep looking past it. We look for something special, something dramatic, something far away. And all along, it is right here, in the breath, in the listening, in the quiet space between one thought and the next. The Zen master, Huang Po, said it simply, people are afraid to forget their own minds, fearing to fall through the void with nothing to hold on to. They do not know that the void is not really void. It is the realm of the real. The void is not really void. It is the realm of the real. That is the great mystery, and it is yours. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the thinking quiet. Let the body breathe. And when something in you is ready, we will go on. There is a word in Buddhism that gets misunderstood more than almost any other. The word is emptiness. When most people hear it, they think of something bleak, a blank wall, a hollow feeling, the kind of emptiness you feel when nothing seems to matter anymore. The word itself sounds like a loss, like something has been taken away. But in Buddhist teaching, emptiness means something completely different. It means openness. It means spaciousness. It means that nothing is as fixed or as heavy as it appears. It means that the walls we have built around our sense of self are not as solid as we thought, and that beyond those walls there is room. room to breathe, room to grow, room to be surprised by life. True emptiness, in the Buddhist sense, is not cold. It is alive. It is warm. It has room in it for everything, for joy and for sadness, for certainty and for doubt, for the whole messy, beautiful range of what it means to be human. But this misunderstanding causes real confusion, and sometimes real difficulty. A woman once came to a meditation retreat. She had been practicing with another teacher for some time, and she had come believing she was making real progress. She walked very slowly, as if she were being mindful with every step. Her face was blank. Her voice was flat. She spoke about her practice the way someone might describe the weather, without feeling. When she sat down with the retreat teacher, she said, "Everything is empty. I take a step and it is empty. I sit down and it is empty. I eat and it is empty. There is nothing there." The teacher looked at her carefully. He had been teaching for many years, and something about the way she spoke worried him. She was not describing the kind of emptiness the Buddhist teachings point toward. She was describing something else. "Tell me more about this emptiness," he said. "It is everywhere," she said. "Whatever I do, there is nothing there. Nothing matters." "And how long have you felt this way?" She thought about it. "A long time," she said. "Years, maybe. But I thought it was the practice. I thought it meant I was letting go." The teacher watched her as she spoke. She was pale. She had not been taking care of herself. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her eyes had a flatness to them that had nothing to do with spiritual peace. She was not describing freedom. She was describing a life that had lost its color. After a few more minutes of quiet conversation, the teacher said something to her that surprised her. "What you are describing is not what the Buddha meant by emptiness," he said, gently but clearly. "You are not experiencing openness. You are exhausted. You have been unhappy for a long time, and the meditation practice gave it a name that sounded spiritual. But what you are feeling is not freedom. It is heaviness, and you deserve help with that." She looked at him. For a moment, she did not say anything. Then her eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears exactly. More like the tears that come when someone finally says the thing you have needed to hear. "I think you are right," she said. This is an important story because the confusion it describes is more common than people realize. Sometimes, when a person is going through a very difficult time, they may hear Buddhist teachings about letting go and emptiness and think that the flatness they feel is what the Buddha was talking about. But it is not. Not at all. The Buddha's emptiness is not a lack of feeling. It is a lack of clinging. It does not mean that nothing matters. It means that you can engage with life fully without being trapped by it. You can love without possessing. You can work without being driven by anxiety. You can feel sadness without drowning in it. You can feel joy without clinging to it so tightly that the clinging itself becomes a source of fear. In true emptiness, there is vitality. There is openness. There is a sense of aliveness that most people rarely experience because they are too caught up in their thoughts and worries to notice it. The Buddhist word for this is sunyata, and it does not mean nothingness. It means boundless potential, like an empty cup, which is useful precisely because it is empty. It can hold anything. The teacher at the retreat helped the woman see the difference. And over the weeks that followed, with care and support, she began to find her way back to something real. Not spiritual emptiness, but simple, warm, ordinary life. The taste of food, the feeling of sunlight on her skin, the sound of other people laughing nearby. These things returned slowly, and when they did, she knew the difference between deadness and freedom. Freedom had warmth in it. Freedom had color. This brings us to one of the most beautiful paradoxes in all of Buddhist teaching. And it is this: the more you let go of who you think you are, the more alive you become. This sounds backwards. We are taught that holding on is what keeps us safe. That our identities, our achievements, our stories about ourselves, these are what give us substance. And letting go of them should make us less, emptier, smaller. But the Buddhist experience, over thousands of years, says the opposite. Letting go makes you more present, more awake, more fully yourself. It is a little like clenching your fist very tightly for a long time. After a while, you forget you are clenching. It just feels normal. Your hand feels stiff and tired, but you do not know why. Then one day, you open it, and the relief is enormous. Blood flows back in. The fingers move freely. The hand feels alive again. You did not add anything to the hand. You just let go. And what returned was aliveness. That is what happens when you release your grip on who you think you are. The things you were holding so tightly, the old stories, the fixed ideas, the need to be seen a certain way, when those soften, what comes flooding in is not emptiness. It is life. A student of Buddhist meditation once described meeting a teacher who had spent decades in practice. He had read the teacher's books. He had heard stories about his wisdom. He expected the teacher to be calm and detached, maybe a little distant, reserved, the way people sometimes imagine monks and meditators to be. The student traveled a long way to spend a week at a retreat led by this teacher. And on the first evening, the teacher walked into the room. He was nothing like what the student expected. He was the most alive person I had ever met, the student said later. He was passionate. He laughed more than anyone in the room. He told terrible jokes. He asked people about their lives and actually listened to the answers. He noticed small things. He noticed when someone was struggling, and he would go sit with them quietly. He was interested in everything, the student continued. Art, music, gardening, cooking. He had opinions. He had enthusiasm. He was not trying to be above life. He was in the middle of it. Someone once asked the student, "How is that possible?" I thought the point of Buddhist practice was to become peaceful and detached. The student thought about it. He was peaceful, he said, but not in the way I expected. He was peaceful because nothing in him was fighting against life. He was not resisting anything. He was not performing anything. He was not trying to be anything other than what he was. And because of that, he was completely free to be himself. And himself turned out to be the most vivid, generous, alive person I had ever encountered. He paused. I think that is what years of letting go actually does. It does not make you less. It makes you more yourself, more real, more here. This is what the Buddhist tradition means when it talks about awakening. It does not mean becoming blank or passive or removed from life. It means becoming so present that every moment is full, so open that nothing is blocked, so free that your natural warmth and intelligence and humor and kindness can all come through, unfiltered. We sometimes think of spiritual growth as a process of becoming less attached, less emotional, less involved. But the Buddhist masters who have gone deepest into the practice report the opposite. They become more engaged, more tender, more curious, more present to the beauty and the strangeness and the humor of being alive. A Sufi teacher who had studied alongside many Buddhist practitioners once put it this way. He said that when someone truly wakes up, they become more alive in every sense. Not just spiritually, but physically, emotionally, creatively. He used the word eros, not in a romantic sense, but in the sense of life force, aliveness, the energy that makes a person real and present and magnetic. He said that when you meet someone like that, you feel it immediately, not because they are performing, but because they are not performing. They have stopped pretending, and what remains is so real and so vivid that it fills the room. And this makes sense if you think about it. When you let go of the effort of pretending, the energy that went into the pretending is freed up. When you stop performing a version of yourself for the world, what is left is just you. Unguarded, unhurried, real. And that turns out to be more than enough. Think about the people you know who seem most at ease with themselves. They are not perfect. They are not trying to impress anyone. They are just there, present, available. And because of that, being around them feels good. It feels restful. It feels like permission to be yourself too. There is a verse by a poet who spent much of her life struggling with this very thing. She writes about the long, slow process of becoming herself. She describes years of running, of wearing other people's faces, of being shaken and dissolved by the pressure of trying to be what the world seemed to want. She writes about hurrying, as if she might run out of time before she found the thing she was looking for. And then, finally, she describes arriving, standing still, feeling her own presence, her own weight, her own reality, not as a burden, but as something solid and true. And in that stillness, she found that there was time. There had always been time. She had just been too busy chasing something to notice. She writes, in the simplest terms, that after years and places, after wearing other people's faces, she has finally become herself. And in that becoming, time itself changes. It stops being the enemy. It stops running out. There is enough. This is what the Buddhist path leads to. Not a dramatic transformation, not a flash of lightning, but a quiet arrival, a coming home to yourself, the discovery that what you were looking for was here all along, underneath the effort, underneath the performance, underneath the years of trying to be something other than what you are. The Zen tradition sometimes describes this as the gateless gate. The gate is always open. There is nothing blocking it. The only reason we do not walk through is that we keep looking for a gate somewhere else. We keep thinking that freedom must be far away, or hard to reach, or reserved for someone holier or more disciplined than us. But the Zen masters say, the gate has no door. You are already on the other side. You just have not noticed yet. There is a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities do not change, but the person doing them is no longer fighting against the moment. They are no longer wishing they were somewhere else or someone else. They are just here, chopping, carrying, being. And that simple being, without resistance, turns out to be the freedom everyone was looking for. There is a small story from the folk tradition of Eastern Europe that captures this with a light touch. A young woman is sitting in a room on the morning of her wedding. The custom in her village is to look sad about leaving home. It is expected. The relatives are gathered around, watching. She is supposed to sit in the kitchen during her last hour in the house and look sorry to be going. And she does. She sits there, hands in her lap, looking very serious, very solemn. The aunts and uncles nod approvingly. Such a good girl, so devoted to her family. But underneath the serious face, she is smiling. She cannot help it, because she is not sad at all. She is excited. A whole new chapter is beginning. She just cannot show it yet. The story ends with this line: she looks so sad, oh so sad. And in secret, she is smiling. There is something gentle and true about this. We carry more inside us than we show. Beneath the roles we play and the faces we wear for the world, there is often something brighter and more alive than we let on. A part of us that is ready for something new. A part of us that already knows the way, even when we are pretending to be lost. Buddhist practice does not put that brightness there. It just removes what was covering it up. The great Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." We explored this idea earlier in our journey together. But here it takes on a new meaning. Because the beginner's mind is not just about seeing the world fresh. It is about seeing yourself fresh, letting go of the fixed idea of who you are, and discovering, with surprise and relief, that you are more alive and more interesting and more capable of love than you ever gave yourself credit for. The woman on the retreat thought she was experiencing emptiness. What she was really experiencing was the absence of life. The student who met the teacher expected detachment. What he found was a person overflowing with life. The bride sitting in the kitchen looked sad. Underneath, she was ready. This is the paradox at the heart of the Buddhist path. You are nothing, in the sense that there is no fixed, permanent self to defend. And you are everything, in the sense that without those walls, you are connected to all of life. And between those two, gently, your life flows. There is only one of you. In the entire history of the universe, there has never been another being exactly like you. And there never will be again. This moment, this breath, this particular arrangement of starlight and awareness, it is happening once, just once. And the invitation of the Buddhist path is simply this: be here for it. Fully, without apology, without pretending to be someone else. Just this, just you, just now. The Buddha sat under a tree and let everything fall away. And what was left was not nothing. It was everything, clear, awake, and free. That is more than enough. It always has been. Let us rest for a moment. Let the breath come easily. There is nowhere to rush. Whenever you feel ready, we will gently continue. Some years ago, a powerful storm swept across the southern coast of a warm country. It was one of the strongest storms in living memory. The winds were extraordinary. Measuring instruments broke before they could capture the full speed. Trees were uprooted. Buildings were flattened. Entire neighborhoods were changed overnight. In the path of the storm, there was a large wildlife sanctuary. It was a beautiful place, home to hundreds of animals from around the world. Great cats, monkeys, all kinds of smaller creatures, birds of every color. The people who worked there loved these animals. They had spent years caring for them, learning their habits, earning their trust. When the storm was coming, the staff did what they could. They secured the structures. They made sure the animals had shelter. But there was only so much anyone could do against winds like that. And when the storm passed through, it tore the sanctuary apart. Enclosures were destroyed. Roofs were ripped away. Fences came down. The buildings where the animals lived were reduced to piles of rubble. The staff were heartbroken. They were terrified of what they would find when they returned. These creatures they had loved and cared for, how could they have survived something like that? Some of the keepers had been with these animals for 10 or 15 years. They knew them by name, by personality, by the way they moved in the morning when the sun first hit their enclosure. With heavy hearts, they made their way back to the grounds. The roads were blocked with fallen trees and debris. It took hours to get through. And when they arrived, the sanctuary looked like a different place. Everything familiar had been rearranged or destroyed. The first thing they noticed was the birds. The birds had flown away. As soon as the enclosures opened, they had taken to the sky and headed off to wherever they came from originally. They knew exactly where to go. They had always known. Some of the keepers smiled through their worry. At least someone had a plan. And then, slowly, as the staff moved through the wreckage, they began to see movement. A rustle here, a sound there, eyes peering out from under collapsed structures. The animals were alive, almost every single one of them. They had hunkered down. They had found corners and sheltered spots and low places where the wind could not reach them. They had done what animals know how to do, what their bodies understood even if their minds could not explain it. They had tucked themselves in, held steady, and waited for it to pass. They had heard the storm coming. They had felt it in their bones, and they had responded with the oldest wisdom there is. Be still. Get low. Trust that this too will end. The great cats were fine. The monkeys were fine. The smaller creatures had burrowed into whatever they could find. When the keepers came around the corners, some of the animals looked up calmly, as if to say, "There you are. We have been waiting. Where is breakfast?" The staff had prepared themselves for loss, and instead they found life. Stubborn, patient, unshakable life. The buildings were gone. The fences were down, but the living hearts inside them had held. There is something in this story that goes beyond animals in a storm. It points to something the Buddhist tradition has been teaching for a very long time, that there is a kind of strength in us that is not built. It is not something we have to learn or earn or develop through years of effort. It is already there. It is part of our nature. And when life gets difficult, When the winds pick up and things we counted on are shaken, that strength is what holds. The animals did not panic. They did not overthink it. They did not make up stories about what the storm meant or whether they deserved it. They just did what they knew how to do. They got low. They held still. And they waited. There is a lesson in that simplicity. When life becomes overwhelming, our first instinct is often to think our way out of it. We analyze. We plan. We worry. We run through scenarios. And sometimes all of that thinking makes things worse because it pulls us out of the present moment and into a storm of our own making inside the mind. The animals did not do that. They stayed in their bodies. They stayed in the moment. They did what was needed and nothing more. The Buddha taught something very similar. He said that within every being there is a nature that is whole and undamaged. No matter what happens on the surface, no matter how difficult life becomes, that nature remains. It cannot be broken by circumstances. It cannot be taken away by loss. It is like the ground beneath a building. The building can be shaken. It can even fall. But the ground is still there. This does not mean we do not feel the storms. Of course we do. We feel them deeply. But underneath the feeling, underneath the shaking, there is something steady. And the more we learn to trust that steadiness, the more we can let the storm be a storm without losing ourselves in it. In Buddhist psychology, this is sometimes described as the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens. It is the storm itself. Suffering is what we add to it. The stories, the resistance, the why me, the fear that it will never end. The animals experienced the storm, but they did not add anything to it. They just waited, and the storm passed, as storms always do. In the Zen tradition, they sometimes tell a story about this kind of trust. A student once came to his teacher during a time of great difficulty in his life. Everything seemed uncertain. He did not know which way to turn. "I feel like the ground has been pulled out from under me," he said. "I have nothing to hold on to." The teacher looked at him quietly. Then she said, "Good. Now you can find out what holds you." The student did not understand right away. But over time, as he sat with those words, he began to see what she meant. All his life, he had been holding on to things, to plans, to ideas about how things should be, to his image of himself. And when those things were taken away, he felt like he was falling. But he was not falling. He was being held by something he could not name, by the awareness itself, by the simple fact of being alive and present and breathing. He had been held the whole time. He had just never noticed, because he was too busy gripping. Letting go of the grip did not mean giving up. It meant discovering that he was supported in ways he had never imagined. The ground had not disappeared. He had just been standing on it so tightly that he could not feel it. This is something that meditation teaches gradually, over time. You sit. You let go of the need to control. And slowly, you discover that you do not fall apart. You discover that underneath the noise and the worry, there is a steadiness that does not depend on circumstances. It does not depend on things going well. It is just there. The Buddhist tradition calls this refuge. Not refuge in the sense of hiding. Refuge in the sense of coming home to something trustworthy. The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The awakened heart, the truth of how things are, and the community of those who walk this path. These are the three refuges, and what they really point to is the discovery that you do not have to face life alone, and you do not have to face it by pretending to be stronger than you are. You can face it honestly, with an open heart, and trust that the heart is enough. This is one of the deepest teachings in Buddhism. That trust is not about certainty. It is not about knowing that everything will turn out the way you want. It is about knowing that you can meet whatever comes, that you have the capacity, that you are, at your core, resilient. Not because you are tough, but because your nature, your deepest nature, is whole. The Zen tradition has a phrase, the oak tree in the garden. A student once asked a Zen master, "What is the deepest truth?" And the master simply said, "The oak tree in the garden." Just that. Something rooted, something real, something that does not need to explain itself. It simply stands. You have that in you. Something rooted, something that has weathered every storm you have been through so far, and it is still here. There is one more story for this part of our journey. It is about an ordinary encounter that became something extraordinary. A man who had been practicing Buddhist meditation for several years was walking down a city street one evening. It was getting dark. The streets were mostly empty. He was on his way home from a meditation group, feeling quiet and settled. A stranger stepped out from a doorway and blocked his path. He was agitated. His eyes were desperate. His hands were shaking. He looked like someone who was having the worst night of his life. Not dangerous exactly, but lost. Deeply, painfully lost. "Give me your money," the stranger said. His voice cracked. The meditator looked at him. His heart was beating fast. He was frightened. But something in his practice steadied him. Something deeper than the fear rose to meet the moment. Years of sitting, years of watching his own mind, years of learning to stay present instead of reacting. It all came together in this one moment on a dark street. "Okay," he said, gently. "Here." He took out his wallet and handed it over. The stranger grabbed it, but he did not leave. He stood there, shifting from foot to foot, uncertain, as if he had expected resistance and did not know what to do without it. "Here," the meditator said. He took off his watch. "Take this too." The stranger looked at the watch in his hand, then back at the man. "Why are you doing this?" "You need it more than I do," the meditator said. "And I have a few other things in my bag. You might as well have them." He pulled out what he had and offered it. The stranger accepted each item slowly, his confusion growing. Then the meditator looked at him directly, not with anger, not with judgment, not with pity, just with honest, steady attention. One person seeing another. "You did good tonight," he said. "You got quite a lot. You really did well." The stranger blinked. The words did not compute at first. Then something behind his eyes shifted. "I did good?" he said. "You did good." The stranger looked down at everything in his hands. He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked up again, and the desperation had softened into something else. Something almost like relief. "I did good," he said quietly to himself. And then he turned and walked away into the evening. When the meditator told this story afterward, he said, the moment itself was not about bravery. It was about seeing. He said that in that instant, looking at this desperate person on a dark street, something happened that he had not planned and could not have rehearsed. He did not see a threat. He saw a human being who was in trouble, and something in him responded not with fear but with kindness. A kindness he did not even know he had in that amount. I do not think I decided to be kind, he said. I think the kindness decided for me. It was already there. The meditation had just cleared away enough of the noise for it to come through. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that stayed with the people who heard it. Maybe all any of us really want is for someone to look at us and say, "You did good. You are okay. You are not as lost as you think you are." And maybe, when we sit in meditation, that is what we are learning to say to ourselves. This is the heart of compassion in Buddhist teaching. It is not pity. It is not looking down at someone. It is meeting another person exactly where they are and seeing in them the same goodness that lives in you, the same confusion, the same longing, the same wish to be seen and to be told that they are all right. There is a teaching that says, do not judge others. There are secrets in their hearts that would make you weep. Every person you pass on the street is carrying something. Every person who has ever frustrated you, or frightened you, or disappointed you, has a story you do not know. And if you knew it, your heart would soften. It always does. This does not mean you accept harmful behavior. It does not mean you put yourself in danger. It means that even in the most difficult encounters, you can choose to see the person behind the behavior. And that choice, that willingness to see, is what the Buddhist tradition calls compassion. The Buddha said, hatred is never ended by hatred. By kindness alone is hatred ended. This is an ancient and eternal law. Kindness is not weakness. It is the strongest thing there is. It is what remains when everything else has been shaken away. It is what the animals knew, hunkered down in the rubble, waiting calmly for the storm to pass. It is what the student discovered when the ground dropped away, and he found he was still held. It is what the meditator knew, standing on a dark street, choosing to see a person instead of a threat. And it is what you know too, in your own way, in your own life, every time you have chosen kindness when it would have been easier not to. Every time you have stayed gentle when the world was not gentle with you. Every time you have looked at someone who was struggling and felt your heart open instead of close. That is your true nature showing through. And no storm, no difficulty, no amount of wind can take it from you. The Buddha spent his life pointing to this. He did not say, become something you are not. He said, remember what you are. And what you are is this: awareness, kindness, a heart that can hold more than you think. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron once said, you are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. The storms come. They always do. But you are not the storm. You are what remains when the storm passes. Open, whole, still here. And here is what the animals at the sanctuary knew, what the keepers discovered when they came back expecting the worst and found life instead. The storms pass. They always pass. And what is left is not wreckage. What is left is what was always there, underneath. Strong, patient, alive, waiting for breakfast. That is your true nature. Not something you need to build, not something you need to earn, something you were born with, something that has carried you this far and will carry you the rest of the way. Trust it. Let us pause here. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the steadiness that is already present. And when you are ready, we will continue together one last time. Over many years, a psychologist who also practiced Buddhist meditation worked with hundreds of people who came to him carrying heavy stories. Each person arrived with a version of themselves that they believed was the final truth. "I am an orphan," one person would say. "I was left behind. That is the most important thing about me. Everything else comes after that. I was betrayed," another would say. "I gave someone my trust completely, and they broke it, and I have never been able to trust again. I am a failure," someone else would say. "I had my chance and it slipped away. And now it is too late." Each of these stories was real. The pain behind them was real, and the psychologist honored that completely. He did not dismiss their experiences or tell them to think positive or move on. He did not offer quick solutions or cheerful advice. He sat with them. He listened. He went all the way back with them to the source of the story, to the moment it began, to the grief or the loss or the wound that had shaped everything that followed. Sometimes this took weeks, sometimes months. He let it take as long as it needed. Because you cannot skip over pain. You cannot go around it. The only way through it is through it, gently, with patience, with someone willing to sit beside you while you feel what needs to be felt. This is something the Buddhist tradition understands deeply. You do not push grief away. You hold it. You make room for it. You treat it with the same tenderness you would offer a child who is hurting. But then, after they had gone all the way back, after they had held the grief and let it breathe, after the story had been told completely and honestly, after there was nothing left to hide or protect, the psychologist would do something simple. He would look at them quietly, with great care, and he would ask one question: "Is that who you really are?" Not harshly, not as a challenge, but gently, with warmth, with the kind of attention that says, "I see your story. I see how real it is. And I also see you, the one behind the story. Is that really who you are? Are you the one who was left behind? Is that the whole truth of you? Because I have been sitting with you for months now, and I have seen someone who is thoughtful and brave and kind. I have seen someone who cares about other people. I have seen someone with humor and intelligence and heart. Is all of that just a footnote to the one terrible thing that happened?" And something would happen. Not every time, but often enough that it became a pattern. The person would pause. The grip of the story would loosen, just a little. And in that loosening, something else would show itself. Something that had been there all along, underneath the pain and the identity built around it. Sometimes the person would cry. Sometimes they would go quiet. And sometimes, in the most beautiful moments, they would laugh. Not because it was funny, but because the relief was so sudden and so complete that laughter was the only response the body could find. They would see, in a flash, that they had been carrying a story so tightly and for so long that they had forgotten it was a story. They had mistaken it for the whole of who they were. And in that one question, the spell broke. No, they would say, almost surprised to hear themselves. No, that is not who I am. That is something that happened to me. But it is not who I am. And in that moment, everything changed. Not the facts, not the history, but the relationship to the history. The story was no longer a cage. It was just a chapter. One chapter among many. And beyond it, there were other chapters. Chapters they had not yet written. Chapters they had not yet imagined. This is the essence of what Buddhist practice offers. Not a way to erase the past. Not a way to pretend that painful things did not happen, but a way to hold those things without being defined by them. A way to say, yes, this happened, and I am more than this. We all carry stories. Some of them are heavy. Some of them are so old and so familiar that we have forgotten they are stories at all. They feel like facts. They feel like the ground we stand on. I am the kind of person who, I always, I never. These sentences feel true because we have said them so many times, but they are not the truth of who we are. They are habits of thought, and habits can change. The psychologists saw this again and again. The moment someone recognized that their story was a story, not a life sentence, something shifted. Not the facts, not the history, but the relationship to the history. And that shift changed everything. There is a teaching in Zen that says, let go or be dragged. It sounds blunt, but it is actually very kind. It is saying, the rope that is pulling you is the one you are holding. You can let go at any time, and when you do, you will not fall. You will find that you are already standing on solid ground. The Buddha saw this in everyone he met. He saw the stories people carried. He saw the identities they had built. He saw the walls they had put up to protect themselves from being hurt again. And he also saw, beneath all of it, something untouched, something whole, something that no amount of difficulty could damage. He called it Buddha nature, and he said it was in every being, without exception, not just in saints and sages, in everyone, in the person who has been hurt, in the person who has done the hurting, in the person who feels lost, and in the person who feels found. It is the same nature, and it is always, always intact. This is one of the most radical and most comforting teachings in all of Buddhism, that no matter what has happened to you, no matter what you have done, no matter how far you feel you have strayed from the person you wanted to be, your deepest nature is untouched. It is like a diamond buried in the earth. The earth can be heavy. The diamond can be hidden for years, for lifetimes. But it does not stop being a diamond. It does not lose its clarity or its light. It only needs to be uncovered. And the uncovering is not a dramatic event. It happens quietly, through sitting, through breathing, through the gentle, repeated act of turning your attention inward and asking, with kindness, what is really here? There is a Buddhist verse that is sometimes recited at important moments. It comes from the Tibetan tradition, and it is spoken as a reminder, especially in times of transition or difficulty. It begins, O nobly born, O O you who are the children of the awakened ones, remember your true nature. Remember, not discover, not create, not earn. Remember, because it has always been here. It was here before the first wound. It was here before the first story. It was here before you learned to be afraid. And it will be here long after the stories have faded and the fear has passed. Remember the clear, open awareness from which everything arises. This is your original nature. This is your true home. Trust it. Rest in it. It has never left you. A Japanese Zen poet, writing centuries ago, looked out at the world around him. It was a difficult time. People were struggling. The world felt uncertain. And yet, spring had arrived. The cherry blossoms were blooming, as they always do, regardless of what is happening in the human world. The trees do not wait for conditions to improve. They bloom because it is their nature to bloom. He wrote simply, "In these difficult times, cherry blossoms everywhere." There is something deeply moving about that. The difficulty is real, and the beauty is also real. They exist at the same time. And the invitation of Buddhist practice is not to choose one over the other, but to hold them both. To see the struggle and the beauty together. To let your heart be wide enough for all of it. That is what it looks like when you remember who you are. The difficulty does not disappear, but the beauty returns. It was always there. You were just too caught up in the storm to see it. And when you finally slow down and look, really look, the cherry blossoms are blooming. And this is not a special ability. It is not something reserved for monks or poets or people who have meditated for 30 years. It is available right now, in this breath, in this moment. The cherry blossoms are always blooming somewhere. The question is whether we have the willingness to look up and see them. The great Indian teacher Gandhi once said something that has stayed with many people over the years. He said, "Before you act, think of the poorest person you have ever seen and ask yourself one question. Will this act be of any use to them?" It is a simple test. And what it does is pull us out of our own small story and into the larger world. It reminds us that our lives are not only about us. They are about each other. The question, "Who am I?" ultimately leads not inward, but outward. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the more you find that your heart is connected to everyone else's. In Buddhism, this is called the bodhisattva path. We explored this earlier. But here, at the end of our journey tonight, it takes on a final meaning. Because the bodhisattva does not help others out of obligation or guilt. The bodhisattva helps others because, having looked deeply, she knows there are no others. Not really. There is one life, expressing itself in countless forms. And to care for another is to care for yourself. And to care for yourself is to care for the world. This is not abstract philosophy. It is something you can feel right now if you let yourself. Think of someone you love. Feel the warmth that rises in you. Now notice that warmth is not coming from outside you. It is already here, in your own heart. It has always been here. Love is not something that arrives from somewhere else. It is something that is uncovered when the walls come down. And the walls do not come down all at once. They come down breath by breath, sitting by sitting, moment by moment. Each time you choose to be present instead of distracted. Each time you choose kindness instead of judgment. Each time you sit quietly and let yourself be, just as you are, without trying to improve or fix or escape. Each of those moments is a small act of remembering. This is the deepest meaning of the question we have been sitting with all evening. Who are you really? You are the awareness that has been here from the beginning. You are the kindness that shows up when you least expect it. You are the strength that held steady through every storm. You are the one who listened to all the stories and was never diminished by any of them. You are the one who sat with the grief and survived. The one who loved even when it was hard. The one who is here, right now, after everything, still breathing, still open, still willing to ask the question. You are the cherry blossoms in difficult times. The Buddhist teaching ends where it began, with a reminder, with a call to come home. This does not require belief. It does not require years of study, or a special practice, or a trip to a faraway place. It only requires willingness. The willingness to stop, even for a moment, and ask, beneath everything I think I am, what is actually here? And when you ask that question honestly, without needing a clever answer, what you find is very simple. Awareness. Presence. A quiet knowing that does not need words. The same awareness that was here when you were a child. The same presence that was here through every chapter of your life. Unchanged. Unhurried. Waiting patiently for you to notice. The Indian teacher whose words we heard earlier in our journey said, "Wisdom says, I am nothing. Love says, I am everything. Between these two, my life flows." And now, perhaps, those words land a little differently than they did before. Because you have been sitting with them. You have been breathing with them. You have been letting them do their quiet work. You are nothing you can name. And you are everything that matters. And between those two, gently, your life flows. There is an ancient Buddhist teaching about compassion that says something beautiful. It says that when we truly remember who we are, when we see our own vastness and rest in it, something natural arises on its own. A deep, effortless compassion for every being who has forgotten their own vastness and is caught in the tangles of the world. This compassion is not pity. It is not sadness. It is a kind of tenderness. The tenderness of someone who has been lost and found their way home, and who now wants to leave a light on for anyone still finding theirs. This is why the Buddhist tradition does not end with personal peace. It ends with service, with care, with the quiet, ongoing work of showing up for the world as best you can, with whatever you have. And so we live. Not perfectly, not without difficulty, but with our eyes open and our hearts soft, doing what we can, being kind where we can, sitting in the stillness when we need to, and trusting that the awareness we rest in is vast enough to hold all of it, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, all of it held, all of it welcome, all of it passing through this one precious life. The Buddha sat beneath a tree and remembered. And what he remembered was not something far away or hidden or hard to reach. It was right here. It had always been right here. And it is here now. In you. In this moment. In this breath. The whole of the Buddhist path. All the teachings. All the practices. All the stories and the wisdom and the centuries of quiet sitting, they all point to this one thing. You are already what you are looking for. you have always been. The search was never about finding something new. It was about coming home to something old, something that has been waiting for you, patiently, kindly, for your entire life. Tonight, we began with a simple question. Who are you really? And over these 9 chapters, we have let that question open, slowly, from many different sides. What we found, again and again, is that the answer is not what we expected. We are not our names. We are not our jobs or our roles or the stories we have repeated so many times they feel like fact. We are not even the thoughts that fill our minds from morning to night. These things are real. They matter. But they are not the deepest truth of who we are. The deepest truth, as the Buddhist tradition has been pointing toward for over 2,000 years, is simpler than any of that. It is awareness itself, the quiet, steady presence that has been here through every chapter of your life, the one that watched you grow, the one that held you through difficulty, the one that is here right now, listening, breathing, being. It has no name. It does not need one. It simply is. And when we rest in that awareness, even briefly, something changes. Not the world, not our circumstances, but our relationship to all of it. The grip loosens. The heaviness lightens. We see more clearly. We breathe more easily. We remember that we are part of something much larger than the small, busy self we usually take ourselves to be. This is what the Buddha discovered, not through force or ambition, but through stillness, through the willingness to stop and ask, what is actually here? And what he found was not a new idea. It was a truth that had always been present, waiting to be noticed. That every being carries within them an awareness that is whole, undamaged, and free. That no amount of difficulty can destroy it. That it is as natural as breathing. Tonight, we explored what it means to let go of the roles we cling to, and to discover that what remains is not less, but more. We sat with the mystery of being alive, the strangeness and beauty of having a body, of being conscious, of finding ourselves here on this earth at all. We looked at what happens when we truly see another being, and what happens when we let ourselves be seen. We learned that the soul moves at its own pace, and that sometimes the wisest thing we can do is stop and wait for it to catch up. We saw that life includes difficulty, and that our hearts are wide enough to hold it. We touched the great mystery that no tradition can fully explain, and we found peace in not needing to explain it. We discovered that letting go does not make us empty, but alive. And we remembered that the stories we carry, however real, are not the final word on who we are. All of these teachings, from every corner of the Buddhist tradition, point in the same direction, toward rest, toward trust, toward the quiet confidence that what you are, beneath everything, is enough. You do not need to remember everything you heard tonight. You do not need to carry it all. If one moment stayed with you, one phrase, one feeling, let that be enough. Let it do its work in its own time. And if nothing stayed, that is fine too. Sometimes the deepest teachings land without our knowing. They settle in quietly and show themselves later, in a moment we did not expect. Wherever you are right now, you are welcome here, exactly as you are, with whatever you are carrying and whatever you are ready to set down. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk.